Hello, everyone. Welcome to Conversations with Sekani, a podcast for people in their 20s who are trying to figure out life and not get lost along the way. Today's guest is Jennifer Edwards, a certified financial planner and financial wellness specialist who helps individuals, couples, and families move from stress and confusion around money to lasting clarity and confidence. With advanced training in financial therapy and trauma, Jennifer goes beyond numbers, exploring how our emotions, relationships, and life experiences shape the way we earn, spend, and think about money. Jennifer, welcome to Conversations with Sekani. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thanks. I'm happy to be here.
All right, so I want to start from the beginning, right? The real problem with money. So, you've worked with hundreds of people, and why do so many still struggle with money, even when they have a very good income or financial advice?
Yes, it's because basically we have childhood wounds, unmet childhood needs, what we might call traumas, trapped energy, unprocessed emotions, and the narratives that those have created that show up in our relationship with money as adults. And they impact our ability to be successful with money, just like quietly under the surface, affecting everything. These subconscious messages are beliefs that we've never really explored or vetted. These are all the things that basically determine how we're going to interact with money. So if you've got somebody who, I'm just using an example here, let's say you've got somebody who grew up in a scarcity, like either housing insecurity or food insecurity or something like that, and they become just really anxious and hyper vigilant about money, and so they build some wealth, right? They start a business or something and they really build up some wealth. That feeling of insecurity, unless that has actually been dealt with, they will always feel like they don't have enough. That amount of money will never satisfy that need for security, no matter how wealthy they become. So it really does have to do with what was going on for us as children and in those formative years, and then whether or not we have faced those issues.
Wow, okay. So usually, right, before now, I knew that, our childhood trauma could, appear in probably our behavioral patterns, right? Or probably
Mm.
relationships or even workplace and every other aspect of life. I never knew it could show up in our finance, right? So this
Oh,
is the
yeah.
first time I'm finding out that our childhood trauma could actually, haunt us while in our financial areas of life. So yeah, how can I tell that I probably have something like I don't know how to put my question right, but how can I tell that I'm going through some form of financial trauma from the childhood,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, I call them financial hangups. Usually just some aspect of your relationship with money that you know that what you want to do differently, you know better, you have the education. In my 7 layers, education and behavior are definitely in there, because sometimes it is we don't know what to do differently. Sometimes it is like we don't know how credit works, or we don't know how to invest, or we don't know what savings rate would get us to our goal. But once we know what we should do when we're still finding a hard time doing it, that is when you know that that financial hangup is probably deep seated in some kind of a childhood experience or an earlier experience. Maybe it could be in an adult relationship, but usually patterns in our adult relationships are again reflective of things that were going on for us in our youth and in our childhood. Another place that you could see a financial hangup could be in the way that you interact with money in relationship to another person. So if you are the kind of person who has a really hard time accepting help from other people, I have people like this all over me who are just like, it's you're saying, look, it really would make sense for you to accept this help. It feels almost owed even, and still they just can't seem to accept that help. There's this independence and this kind of control feeling that until that's dealt with, it'll never go away. or if you have something in your relationship, maybe with your life partner, and you're avoiding a conversation that you should be having, or something with parents and adult children. There's a lot of dynamics there where things show up where the children have had a very different meaning around money than maybe the parents have, and they need to be able to see each other's points of view in order for there to be health in that relationship. So pretty much any time that you're thinking to yourself, I know I should do better, and I just can't seem to make it work. I know what's important. I know what I should be doing. And no matter what I try, I just keep coming back to those same behavioral patterns. There's probably something underneath that.
Mhm. Okay, so thank you so much for that one. Actually, I have a question regarding that, but I would have to come back to that because I feel like something else related. So yeah, I want us to talk about, beyond numbers, right? So what do most financial advisors miss when it comes to helping people with money?
Yeah, so what most of them miss, so in at least here in the United States, financial advisors, one of the main reasons that they say you need to work with a financial, one of their basic selling points is that they know that you're going to react emotionally when, especially when like markets change and markets have a lot of movement, especially when there's downturns. It's like, as an advisor, we already know like our clients are going to call us in a panic. Hey, my portfolio just fell, 15%. I used to have, $500,000 in there. Now I only have 3,500 or 350,000 or something like that. Like they're going to call you in a panic. And the whole selling point is I will be here as an advisor to put a little bit of a barrier between your emotions and your poor decisions. Because we all know that when we are reacting emotionally, we're usually not thinking clearly and we're making poor choices. So your advisors, if you're using an advisor, they'll say, this is what I'm going to do. You almost can't tell how much value you're going to have until those things come up. And what I want them to realize, what I want all financial professionals to realize is that what we really should be working on is why are they calling you in a panic in the first place? Okay, so you've taught them. I mean, every financial advisor worth their salt is sending newsletters, is sending, hosting webinars, is giving educational content and advice that says markets move up and down. This is part of the process. A stock, because it's a piece of equity and ownership in a company, and it's subject to market forces, and market forces are dictated by expectations of market participants. So this is just people, like they're going to act out of fear, they're going to act out of greed. And so we already know this. We know this in our heads. And then when we see it happen and we're watching the numbers, a good advisor would say, don't watch your numbers. We're taking care of the plan. We already know there's going to be volatility involved. So that's not helpful. But they're still watching their numbers. Why are they doing that? Why is somebody that has been told, you don't need to look at your accounts because I got you as an advisor, I got you. We've got a plan. We've already built in all of these buffers for how the market's going to move around. So why are you still watching the numbers? And then why, once you see what's happening in your account, are you calling me? And that's because of these feelings that are inside that are saying, hey, I'm scared. I'm scared. And that fear has come from some earlier experience. And because that hasn't been healed, that hasn't been processed, that hasn't been given the attention that it needs, that feeling, they're always going to keep doing that. So, I would like to see advisors work more on either working with a trauma specialist like myself or a financial wellness specialist like myself and saying, let's at the, after this is the process I'd love to see. You meet with your advice, your potential client comes in, they tell you what they're experiencing right now, and it's usually some kind of an emotion like, we're afraid that we're behind, Or we were looking at our accounts and we saw this tremendous drop in, so we pulled everything out of the market, and now we're reaching out to you because we don't know if we've done the right thing. Or we're in our mid to late 40s and we're looking at our accounts and we're realizing we might not have enough, and so we're afraid that we might not be able to retire when we want to, and so we're reaching out to you. So you deal with that initial situation, you get them taken care of and settled down, and that initial problem has been resolved, and you start working with them. Then I'd love to see after that, hey, so most people have some sort of experience with money that is rooted in childhood experiences that hasn't been fully processed, which is what leads to these emotional reactions, like the one that brought you into me in the first place. I'd like to introduce you to a psychologist, specialist, a therapist, somebody with my kind of training, and we're going to just start tackling like kind of some of these things so that you can just feel more calm and confident around money. And then you shouldn't need to call me all the time. I got the numbers. We've taken care of it. The computer says we're going to be able to do just fine. We've got all these stress tests that say you could live to be a lot older than you're probably going to live. You could spend more than you probably could ever spend, and we're going to be okay. And yet I know that you're still going to call me and you're still going to feel anxious about this. And so I'd like for you to work with this person and have them help you guide through this. And then also, you may have differences of opinion or experiences between yourselves as a couple, and they can help you with that too. Because I don't know any couple who comes in and says, we are 100% aligned on every single decision, every single goal, every single way of getting there. That just isn't the case. If somebody's saying that, then somebody's not speaking up about what they really want. So we could address that as well.
All right, wow. So basically, it's important for if every financial advisor to, apart from, the numbers, right, they should also understand the client's emotions with money, and know how to, navigate the client's emotions and money, and also let them know that don't worry about the figures, right? I'm watching it for you. In case they do
Mm-hmm.
know, how you should learn how to, try and regulate their emotion, or probably work with a therapist, right? That works on emotions and money also. So yeah, am I right with that one?
Well, I mean, and it's so funny to tell somebody not to worry about something. The fact that you're even having to say that means that they're anxious about it. And telling it's like telling a child that, they're not hurt, or they don't, they might just start to be silent about their pain, but it doesn't really make it go away. So I would still say, like, it's not, hey, don't worry. It would say, I've if you've got confidence in me and the mechanics behind the plan, this is still being taken care of. But let's get to the point where one of the main things that happens with so many people who are working with advisors is they get to the point where they've built up this entire this entire amount of wealth to support their lifestyle in retirement, and then they get there and they can't spend it. They're so used to watching their account balances increase that when they start to watch them decrease, they have a very visceral reaction to, like, what if I run out of money? It is a very salient fear. Even if you show them the numbers and you say, here's what would need to happen in order for you to run out of money, and it's just, some extremely unlikely thing, their mind is still thinking that could happen to me. What happened? What if it's all of those things combining?
Yeah.
And so yeah, that's one of the main things that happens, is that you can't tell somebody calm down or settle down about this. There's this internal, and it really, it's rooted in these childhood experiences, and because we were immature, our brains were immature and illogical when we were learning these things, and nobody was explaining them to us in a way that we could really understand as children. It does feel life threatening to these internal parts of ours. It feels like it literally could kill us. So yeah, we have to, I would say, let's, and if we can deal with this, especially in America, this is what I'd love to see is if we can get the wealth holders of the country to feel really confident and calm around money, I believe philanthropy would increase. We have enough wealth to cover all of the needs for all of the nonprofits, for years and years. But but these wealthy individuals are holding on to all of their wealth. They're not circulating it back into society and taking care of those who are the vulnerable populations, the marginalized communities, and the needs there. And if we can get them to not feel like they have to hold on to it like a security blanket, because like I said, they'll never feel like they have enough, then I think we'll be able to solve a lot of our social ills. I think it'll trickle down into that.
Right, wow. Okay, so yes, thank you so much for that beautiful one, actually. And it brings me, I want to ask about, your seven layer framework. So I need you to break it down for, can you break down your seven layer financial wellness framework in a simple way, actually, that, people can actually understand?
Yeah, the seven layers is basically a framework to diminish financial shame. And
Mm,
that's really our very first step in getting healthy around money is to recognize that there were all these external, broader forces that impacted our ability to be successful with money, as well as these deeper internal forces that were outside of our control. And when we just at least come to that awareness and we say, this is the statement that I have my clients make. I say, I may not be responsible. I mean, I am not to blame for why I am where I am with money right now, but I'm responsible for where I go from here. And it has to do with the seven layers are all of the factors that impact how you're interacting with money. So societal at the biggest layer, all of the systemic forces that make it, acknowledging that certain groups of people are favored and certain groups of people are disfavored. And saying, oh yeah, maybe my ability to earn money or to save money or to trust institutions comes from some of these external factors. And that may be why part of why I am where I am. Then we get into the relational things, your family dynamics, the systems in your family, who taught you what, who taught you by actual like this is how you do something, like showing you something, and who taught you by the modeling, like just how they lived. And then you may have relationship issues inside of your life partnership that make it difficult for you to reach your goals. So we talk about all of those. And then the educational layer is, again, just literacy, like maybe you just don't know. Behavioral is, yeah, we might have to set up some new behavioral systems. We might have to be like, okay, we're going to set, a date on our phone that we're going to itemize our receipts and look at, next month's budget or have a money date or, we're going to make sure that on an annual basis, we're checking our net worth numbers and that we have maximized all of the retirement accounts that we expect to use, those kinds of things. Then the physiological, this is telling us that what's going on with our bodies is going to impact our behavior with money. So just the basic sleep, diet, and exercise, as well as our nervous system responses, the stress that we're under, all of those kinds of things. And then the psychological, that's the mindset layer, where our narratives live. And these are things that we learned in childhood that we probably haven't filtered, we haven't vetted them, we haven't explored them. We're just living according to them. So we have to expose those beliefs and those narratives and then really decide like what beliefs do I want to carry forward and what do I want to dismiss from going forward. And then the neurological layer is literally where the trauma lives. This is the nervous system saying something that we may need to do with money. It might say, this is not safe. That experience is not safe. Either that behavior, that different thought pattern, whatever it is, if it's not safe, your nervous system isn't going to let you do it, and then there's no way for you to overcome that. I mean, I could teach you budgeting classes all day long, but if you think that dealing with money is life threatening, like on a nervous system level, then until we deal with that, we're not going to make any progress on the other things.
that's one. Okay, so yes, thank you so much for, sharing these layers of framework with us. And yeah, I want us to also talk about couples and conflicts, right? Most couples, they usually have conflicts because of money. actually. So why do you think they fight so much about money, and how can they actually navigate it better?
Yeah, I'm gonna just write down your question so I don't lose my train of thought. So I want to clarify what the word conflict means in the terms of the biggest relationship experts that we have in the United States, the John and Julie Gottman. They help us understand that conflict is a normal part of relating. That's just seeing things differently. It's the contention and the fighting and the way that you deal with conflict that is going to determine the success or failure of your relationship. So having conflict, having like where you're saying, well, I want this and I want this, and you're going to have to find a way to for one path forward. Sometimes you can just say, okay, you do that and I'll do that, but sometimes you have to come to one action going forward. And so the fact that you have conflict is actually a good thing. That means that both of you feel safe enough to express your desires and your hopes and your wishes and your opinions and your feelings. So having conflict is not indicative of a failing relationship. What we have to understand is when people fight, especially if they're fighting in a way that doesn't lead to greater understanding and to greater closeness afterwards. So what we want are for our conflict to actually help us discover more about each other. Oh, I had no idea that you felt that way about money. Or I can see how this experience with your mother when you were, 7 or 8 could lead to you feeling this way about money. And I'm glad to know that about you. I feel more intimately close to you having this new piece of information. We still have to find a way, make a decision on the way to go forward. But when you go like, I get you. I get why you're saying that. I understand where that's coming from. And then the other partner goes, and I get you too. So now taking those two perspectives into account and being able to say, it's not, you're not just selfish and you're not just lazy or you're not just, it's like, oh, this is deep seated in something that has been with you for a long, long time. So the first thing to recognize is that when we're fighting about money, we're not really fighting about money.
Mm.
We're fighting about what money means to each of us. We're fighting about the identity that we have entwined into money. We're fighting about usually some kind of a fear, oftentimes abandonment or rejection will show up there. And it's just in reflective of like, okay, money is what we need in order to reach our goals and our desires, right? If we want to go on a vacation, I have a desire to hike Mount Kilimanjaro. It's going to take money to get there. And so that is why it's showing up, is because money is needed for us to be able to live the life that we want, to be able to thrive. And then it's out there on display for everybody to judge. Our priorities, like what's important to us. If high, if really expensive cars is the thing that I want, it's going to take money to get there. And then everybody that sees that car is going to know, oh, they're going to say, well, I think that's a poor use of money. Or, you could sure feed a lot of homeless people in, New York with the money that you used to buy that Ferrari or whatever. And so there's all of this judgment. There's all of this, people deciding for us whether or not, and the people that matter, those opinions that matter, the people are the people that are closest to us. So yeah, there's going to be, people will be making judgments about that. And that's just kind of a scary thing because then they could reject you. And then they could say, I don't agree with that choice. And that feels like I don't actually approve of you. And that's again that immature belief that would show up from our childhood, making those statements in our subconscious.
Wow. Thank you so much. This has been amazing, actually, Jennifer. And yeah, we've been talking about money, right? Having money and, financial advice and everything. But I want you to give us like a real explanation of what financial wellness is, because, I know it's beyond just having money. So what truly is financial wellness?
So my definition is going to be different from a lot of people's out there. I don't know very many people that define it the way that I do, because I believe that it's, if you Google, I want to meet with a financial wellness person, they would probably cover a budget for you. They would probably look at your debt ratios, maybe try to find a way to lower your debt so that you could save more, get in control of your spending, maybe stop spending money on some things that you have said, hey, these aren't really important to me, but I just kind of buy them anyway, and kind of work at it from that way. So usually it means, saving enough, having a healthy debt ratio, not spending more than what you earn, saving for the goals that you have. Like that would be considered being financially healthy. My definition would include that your spending and your saving are in the realm of being very conscious choices, and that you are basically living from day to day without financial regret. So I see this with with wealthy individuals. So people who would, you meet with a financial wellness specialist and they'd be like, well, you got plenty of net worth, you got plenty of assets. But I've seen wealthy people who cannot let go of constantly checking their accounts or being worried about how their children are going to use their financial resources once they die, or just feeling again like that nervousness, the nervousness just even around using the money that they have saved, like spending it, like going on a nice vacation after you've worked to save, this money for retirement. That if you're not doing that stuff well, then I would say that's not being financially healthy. I would say it really has to do with, like, I'm making very deliberate, conscious choices around money, that because I hear all the time, oh man, that was a bad decision because it had a bad outcome. But those two things aren't always the same. Like if you say, okay, based on the information that I have at present, the factors that are involved in my ability to make this decision, I'm making the best choice that I can right now. And if that means that, because I was working with people in 2021, and in the United States, our interest rates were nice and low in 2021. This was after we were coming out of the pandemic, and we hadn't really hit that high inflation that hit in 2022. And so a lot of people, the decision was, okay, is it time to buy a house? They wanted to buy a house because everybody's looking like, should I be buying a house? I mean, interest rates are really low. And we'd look at their financial statements and we'd talk about, when it really makes sense and timing wise to buy a house, and it just didn't make sense. And then 2022 hits and interest rates start climbing, and then a couple of years later it's like, oh man, I don't know that we'll see 2.5% in anybody's lifetime that's on the planet right now. So did they make a poor choice if at that, then they're looking, oh man, I should have bought a house a couple of years ago when interest rates were low and we could have afforded it. And it was like, well, we looked at the numbers back then. We looked at your situation back then. And we very consciously decided that that wasn't the time to buy a house. And the health of your finances in the timing and the readiness to buy a house isn't really determined by what's going on externally and in the news and with interest rates. And so we can look back at that time and just go, I don't have any regret. Yeah, sure. If I had seen the future, all of us would live differently.
Yeah.
If we'd be able to say this is when the market is going to have a downturn, or this is when things are going to uptick, or this is when this major geopolitical action is going to take place. Yeah, of course we'd all live differently. But we don't have that perspective. We can only act on the information that we have now. So that would be part of it, is just being able to accept that I'm going to make the best decisions I can. And then I'm going to just, there's not even anything to forgive about yourself when you're just like, yeah, sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't. And it doesn't have anything to do with, how smart you were, or whether or not you had a lot of forethought, or that was just kind of dumb. It's just like, no, it just could have been a very smart decision that had a poor outcome, which are two different things. So yeah, for financial wellness, for me, it's like, how are you feeling around money? When you think about money, do you have a family member that's constantly complaining to you about how stingy you are? Or when will, maybe they want you to retire, like you're aging. I see this a lot too, where it's just like, their identity is so wrapped up in the work that they've done, that they've been doing for all these years, which it's a very real, it's like this is the role that you've had for all, most of your life, your whole adult life. And so they just kind of keep pushing back retirement, pushing back retirement. And maybe the spouse is saying, I have dreams I'd like to be able to do with you that would take some time. And I feel like I'm not important. And so if that's happening and you have enough money in the bank, like somebody might say you're financially well if you have enough money in the bank, but if that's happening, I'd say no, you're not. You need financial wellness. You need somebody to guide you to some better financial wellness, and that's not being financially healthy. So that's just a couple of examples. But honestly, I have yet to meet anybody that doesn't have it. When I go in to speak at events or conferences or whatever, I have the audience raise their hand. I say, how many of you have some kind of a financial hang up? And most everybody knows what that means, even if I just say those words, like some kind of a finance, something that you're not doing with money that you know you should be doing. You're either overspending or you're having a hard time spending, or you aren't saving the way that you should, or you just have a leaky budget where like I'm probably spending hundreds of dollars in this area that's not really all that important to me. Or maybe you have an addiction, a gambling addiction, a shopping addiction, or a chemical addiction that's costing money and that's leading to financial issues, or just, whatever. Okay. So most people will raise their hand. About 75% will raise their hand. And then I say, now, for the rest of you who didn't raise your hand, if I were to pool the people that are closest to you, your spouse or your children, or your best friend if you're not partnered, would they say that you have a financial hang up, and what would that be? And then the rest of the hands go up because they know, yeah, I might like how thrifty I am, but it's really bugging my spouse. Or I might really like, the amount of money that I'm spending on, video games or shoes or whatever, but it's really causing stress in my relationship. So that it usually covers most of the population has some kind of issue with financial wellness that if they look closely enough, they find, yeah, this could improve.
All right. Wow. Jennifer, this was such an eye-opening conversation, right? Especially around the emotional side of money that so many people overlook, right? So I feel like I've learned so much already. I've learned a lot, and I know you have a message for people out there, right? So if someone feels overwhelmed or stuck financially, what's the first step they should take?
Well, of course, my first step would be to visit our website and just get on a call with me. A 20-minute call is free. And so I can at least, like, when we talk about it, I can say, this is what I'm seeing with you. And even if you say, okay, that's all I want, it's just the one tip of like, where does this lie and what should my next step be? Then we've made some progress. We've done something of value. And then, of course, if you decide to work with me, we can really, that's where transformation happens. That's where, most of us need a guide. We're just not going to get all that far without somebody helping us because it's just hard to see all those things on our own. But I would start with, we do have a free resource on the website. It's a money beliefs inventory. And that can just be really eye-opening to fill that out and to see, like, what do I actually believe about money? What are my core beliefs? There's instructions in there about filling it out with the very first thought that comes to mind, and not checking that, not changing that. If you're like, ooh, I don't really like what this says, I'm gonna, I don't really believe that. Your subconscious believes that. So you need to recognize that that's actually the guiding force in your relationship with money. And that can be very eye-opening. And then you just kind of work on, you could Google like how to reprogram an unhealthy belief or a limiting belief. And that could get you to start making some progress.
All right. Wow. Yes. Thank you so much. This has been amazing. And it brings us to the final segment of my podcast. It's called the rapid fire segment. Right.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So
And
yeah.
the website for our website, it's breakthroughfinancialwellness.com. That's where we live. So breakthrough financial wellness, all one phrase, .com. That's where you can find me, set up a meeting. Let's just talk about what your hang up is and how it's limiting you and where we can go from there.
Okay, all right, noted. And I'll be dropping that in the show notes actually. So yes, starting now, right? Money is
What was that last question?
okay, money is
Oh, money is. I thought you said money ease. Um, and I was like, what is money ease? I don't know what that means. Money is. So are you asking me what my money is?
yeah, just one word.
Yes.
What is money?
Yeah. For me, I would say money is identity. That's what I have
Mm,
seen for most people. It means it symbolizes something about themselves.
okay, all right. And wealth means
Wealth means security.
security. Okay. Clarity comes from.
Clarity comes from consciousness. So being really present with your thoughts.
All right. And healing looks like.
Healing looks like it looks like lowering the amount of time that you spend thinking about money. It really is not about money. It's about the more important things, your relationships, your dreams. Money should just be a very small part of your day.
All right. And yes, finally, financial freedom feels like.
Ah, gosh. Well, I'm not retired yet, so I'm not at the point where I could live off of all of our assets without having to earn any more money. But I do feel confident in where we're going, so I don't stress about money anymore. And I would just say that financial freedom really feels like choices,
Mm,
the ability to
mm,
make choices. Yeah.
all right. So yes, thank you so much. And I know you've said it already, but where can listeners actually get to know more about you and what you do?
So we're on all the major social platforms. If you look up my name, Jennifer Edwards, Breakthrough Financial Wellness, you'll see us on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and all of those places and LinkedIn, everywhere like that. And then the website is Breakthrough Financial Wellness. You'll see what we're up to over there.
Okay, all right. So yes, thank you so much, Jennifer. This has been amazing. And to my listeners, thanks for tuning in to Conversations with Sekani. If this episode sparked something in you, make sure to share to someone you think might need this and also subscribe so you don't miss out on new episodes. Thank you, Jennifer. Do have a wonderful day.
Thank you. You
All
too.
right.